Okay. I know that nobody is joined as of yet, which is fine. Um, Nobody usually watches these when they're live anyway, so I'm not really that worried. But we've made a ton of cool progress, um, and I just wanted to show you guys what we've discovered. First things first, we have finally started to utilize this. This game is actually being created by 3 people, 2 of which are actually accessing the game in studio, like within the IDE. So we have, oh, let me switch this in my, we don't need a game title for this. This is not really, yeah, okay. So we don't, we don't have the same headaches that we did with Beefender, our last game, where our means of source controlling was really just saving a local copy of the game we were working on and then posting it to the Google share drive. It became a headache because if one of my partners and I were working on it at the same time, but we weren't communicating that we were working on it, we would both post an update that was missing each other's work, right? So now with GitHub, we're able to run diffs across the different files that we update, and we can choose what code we're going to merge with what, and ultimately, when we're ready to update our main branch, we can do so instead of every update being posted being the main build. So that's one of the cool things. If you guys haven't hooked up source controlling yet within GameMaker, I highly recommend it. Yesterday, I actually had my first scare, I guess you could say. Some of the scaling and resolution work that I've been doing has had me altering stuff that was drawn in the draw event to be drawn to the GUI layer, and then vice versa, stuff that was at the GUI layer to be drawn in the regular draw event. So there was a lot of kind of going back and rehashing some work that was done because of the use of viewports. And for whatever reason, I pulled the repository and cloned the repository yesterday and opened up the build, and the entire code from a single draw GUI event was completely erased. I don't know if that was something to do with the use of GitHub. I don't know if I accidentally wiped the code clean from the event moments before I pushed the changes to the repository, but it's something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. So while I do recommend using GitHub, just make sure that you're not falling victim to the same thing, because if you lose track of it, or if it's a small change that you don't notice, right at the beginning of the execution of your game, it could be pretty tough to figure out, where, if GitHub is wiping some code, where that missing code should be. So I'm just going to run a copy of the game now. Actually, no, I'm not. I want to show you guys a couple of things. Take a step back to when we built Beefender. One of the coolest experiences ever, right, was getting feedback from people that you have no idea who these people are, right? Just regular YouTubers that make a video about your game. And we had one group of guys or people take a look at Beefender and completely tore it apart because of how we scaled our graphics. And pixel sizes were this size on this image, but they were that size on that image, and some images were like manually scaled so they looked fuzzy on screen. And as amateur game developers, that's not really something that we were really taking into consideration, because hey, it looked good on the screens we were making it on, and obviously, for a game that we put up for sale, we're doing for other people, so we have to take those people into consideration. And in this game, we almost started going down the same path, and I decided to halt everything until I was comfortable getting something that automatically scaled the game to whatever screen it was on. So we have 3 monitors that we're working against, or that we're testing against anyway, as we develop this game. One of them is a 720p television. That's a resolution of 1360 by 768. I have my primary display here, which is 1920 by 1080. This is a 1080p screen. And then a third monitor, which is kind of the different of the bunch, is 1440 by 900. I guess it's more popular than I'm aware of it to be. But nonetheless, we have 3 different resolutions that we're working with, right? So I first started by making a little subroutine that you could press the spacebar at any time of the game, and it would flip through the aspect ratios and would change the camera size and the viewport size accordingly, right? I'm comfortable with the way that those looked. So what I wanted to do was automate that process, right? So the player's not going to decide what their game's scaling and resolution is going to look like. The game is just going to detect it itself, and it's extremely simple. This part you don't have to worry about because this was just for debugging purposes, right? We can comment that out now. But the first thing that we do is we create an object. We just called it ODisplay, and I pop it into the first room of the game, right? So when it's created, it grabs the width and height of the player's display, and then all throughout the game, if the display width and height are, in this case, 1440 by 900, then we adjust our camera's width and height, as well as our viewport. Now these numbers have to be even multiples of this, right? If we had 360.25, somewhere in there, the game is going to try to calculate a fraction of a pixel, and it will throw your sprite drawings off, and they start to look kind of amalgamated and, you know, goofy looking. Same thing, if our display is 1920 by 1080, boom, we're going to make it this. If it's 1360 by 768, bam, we're going to make it that. And then again, more debugging stuff that I don't need because we've already tested this, so I'm just going to comment this out. And then it's just, you know, if we wanted to, we could just go down the line and get all the, you know, Steam tells you the displays and you know, what Steam users are using, and I believe the vast majority of users are on 1920 by 1080, but we can just go down the line and define out known display widths and heights and come to a camera size accordingly, right? So this is pretty cool because it's really, really simple, and theoretically this should work to where even if the player manually changes their resolution within Windows, this should pick up on that change and rescale accordingly because it's doing it on the fly. It's a constant check of it, right? I'm not very certain how resource heavy this is. I can't imagine. You know what I should do actually is I'll put these in a we can have some kind of switch in here that'll turn this on only for the first frame that it needs to be set, right? So that this isn't actually running this command or these functions every step. That's a good idea actually, because that'll reduce anything that any load that this is putting on the game, if at all. Okay, I'm going to take note of that actually. Hang on one second. Excuse me. Load langs.xml fail. Oh boy. Add switch to resolution changes. Don't need camera resizing every frame. Let me just drag that off screen here. All right. Give me 1 second. I have to take a quick sip of my drink here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to run the game. Excuse me. And this is Type Quest as it stands right now. Ooh, excuse me. Now, one of the other changes that I had done from the previous videos is added the text drawing to the GUI layer, so that, you know, now that we're using viewports, we have to follow the player around the room. And when we were just drawing that to the room, you know, some stuff would show up off screen and you'd walk into the bottom of the text box after it's already been drawn. So it just kind of looked stupid. Right now, they're all just kind of up in the top left area. They move around a little bit. But I can go in and kind of, you know, if we want, say I wanted to talk to this guy, right? It doesn't make sense really to have the text show up in the top left. I'd rather have it a little closer to where the dialogue is taking place to kind of show that, hey, this is where the conversation is happening. That's an easy change. Just the X and Y values are way off because it used to be drawn differently, not a draw GUI. Same thing with the bar across the top, right? Ignore all of that for now. But I do like the way, you know, how crisp the text itself actually looks. That text is a little off, right? I'm going to have to fix some of the line returns and stuff that I had already added in to make sure that the drawing doesn't go outside of the box. Those are going to have to be adjusted. So there's a lot of kind of circling back and just cleaning up some stuff. But, I mean, when it looks good, it looks really good. Excuse me. Ooh, just ate my lunch, guys, so I hope you don't mind. I'm getting a little burpy. Okay, so this is some of the new content here. Gathering wood or simply traveling outside of town is dangerous. There's monsters in the forest. If you go out there, you better know the basics. Combat is typing based. You see a word over your enemy and complete it accurately to strike. You're also timed each word, so no lollygagging around. You'll also notice a randomly colored letter, green, blue, or red. Complete the word with a green letter to heal yourself, a word with a red letter to deal fire damage, and a word with a blue letter to deal ice damage. Thinking about changing those entirely. It's so cliche, but it is what it is. It gets something in-game that I can showcase that, hey, we can work with this. But drawing just a single letter a different color is kind of weird. Now that I've been away from it for a little bit and kind of thinking about it now, it seems kind of goofy. Might change that to just the whole word being a whole color. But be careful. With some enemies, getting a critical word incorrect could lead to healing your enemy. Each enemy's strengths and weaknesses are for you to figure out. I've also heard that there are other critical word abilities to be learned. Good luck. Still don't know if I like the bigger text that tells you to go to the next area. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just like, you know, like that's a very basic font. Like, are we gonna... I guess that's a design conversation with me and my team, right? Also, the scaling on the combat is still off. Whoops. So... Uh-oh. Oh, my caps lock is on. Brow. Boom! This guy is weak to fire. Garçon! Coffee! Garçon means boy. Now, can I still... I don't remember if I could still lay down a fire. Or maybe it's 10. Get away from me, slime. Yeah. Can I still heal if I'm standing next to it? Did I take that out? Oh yeah, it still works. Right on. It's a good feature. Gotta make these timed though, right? Gotta make them timed and gotta have it so there's only one on any screen. Don't need the player to be spamming these things all over the place. So there's an example of a oh, shit. Of a heal spell there. The other thing I added too was just flashing the screen quick when you complete a critical word. Just kind of gives you a little bit more... Oh, sugar. More of a punch. I think it works nice. Gotta fix the scaling in here. Yikes. It is ugly. So as far as the major changes, that's the big one to combat. You know, there's some discussion within the team now as to... give me 1 second. Let me finish this fight here. I haven't... GNU's not Unix. BWT wrote this. Whole shit. Really? Oh! Oh my god. Come on. Oh, you know what I noticed is not on screen too in combat is my timing bar. The red bar across the... Guess I didn't even notice that at first. That's alright. I'm sure it's just drawn incorrectly somewhere at the wrong dimension or the wrong X and Y coordinate. Okay, so as far as combat goes, that's the update there. And those are the big ones that we've been working on, is trying to add some variety to combat, and eventually these are going to work in such a way where, you know, every enemy type is going to be kind of a different fight strategy. That's my plan. What's neat about the way that I've gotten these enemies created is that they're really easily changed to have their own behavior, right? So I can kind of perfect a single enemy. Like I can perfect the way the slime this enemy is, and then clone that enemy object and very easily make some subtle changes to the code to make it its own thing, right? It has its own behavior, right? And then just change the sprite that's associated with that new enemy object, and bam, you have yourself a new enemy type. That's pretty much what I did with the he's around here somewhere, the tree enemies. Where is he? The tree monster. This guy is basically all slime with a few changes. So I see a lot of potential there. Okay, that's going to be it for this blog. It's been a while since I've done this, but we've kind of taken a break as we got to a certain point here, and now it's time for me to get back into this, and that's going to include trying to do more of these videos to show our updates. So, thank you very much, and we will see everybody soon.